two brothers on the road. And as they've mentioned, it's because they're from New York, and New Yorkers are always moving. And we love having one of them back, Brother Rene Perez, who's no stranger to our podcast, but we're also happy to welcome Worshipful Brother Will Green and Worshipful Victor Negrón to the Craftsmen Online podcast. Welcome, brothers.
Good afternoon, Right Worshipful.
Thank you so much, Right Worshipful. It's a pleasure.
I'm pumped to talk about this as we kick off a new year. And I was talking with Victor, who's the master of this lodge under dispensation, because too often in our craft, we hear of lodges that are losing their charter because of consolidation, or they've lost members, they've struggled with finances, and they have to close their doors. But in this case, we have Agüeybana Lodge, which is the first Puerto Rican lodge under dispensation in New York State. And I wanted to kind of get the story behind the story on what the process is like. So Victor, maybe you could help out with some of the paperwork and everything that goes into getting the dispensation. And then the other brothers can kind of help with some of the partnerships you had to form to get the members to be a part of the lodge.
Sure. So the first thing is coming up with the idea and kind of seeing what this new lodge is going to be about, the name, the spirit, what's the purpose. When I met Brother Rene some years back and Worshipful Will some years back, we always had an interest in doing masonry, but in specific in doing masonry in Puerto Rico. So all three of us traveled to Puerto Rico. We met some of the brothers out there. So we thought it was a good idea. Hey, maybe we could start a Puerto Rican lodge here, because there was a lot of Puerto Rican Masons, but they're spread kind of all throughout the state and other states, but we didn't really have a place where we could all meet on the level. So that kind of was like the impetus for us to start talking. And it went from informal conversations. I think the first person I called was Brother Rene. Say, hey man, why don't we think about doing this? And that kind of snowballed into bringing in Right Worshipful Tim, Worshipful Will, and then kind of brought in the rest of the brothers. We are all from different lodges. We met in different bodies, but we all were together on this mission that we wanted to do masonry and represent Puerto Rico. So just like the basic legalities, I guess, for lack of a better word, is you have to present Grand Lodge with a petition for dispensation from 7 Master Masons who are not holding elective office in any symbolic lodge, which kind of threw us for a loop because a lot of us were serving as officers in other lodges. So we kind of all had to cease that in order to sign the petition and then submit it to Grand Lodge. In addition to that, we had to create bylaws. We held informal meetings where we kind of selected brothers who we thought would be a good fit. At the end, we had about 30 brothers on the roll from different backgrounds. We have Greeks, Bolivians. I mean, the majority of them are Puerto Rican. We have people from Santo Domingo, Bolivia, Ecuador. So we're kind of a mix. Although this is a Puerto Rican lodge in spirit, we accept brothers from all walks, from all faiths, ethnicities. So that kind of started us down the path. So we submitted all that paperwork to Grand Lodge, which was the petition for dispensation, the bylaws, and you also need at least the approval of half of the lodges in your district to form this new lodge. So since I was in the 10th Manhattan, I kind of went individually and spoke to each master in my district and pitched them this idea. And I don't know if you know a lot about the 10th Manhattan, but we are called the Cosmopolitan 10th because we have French-speaking lodges, we have Italian-speaking lodges, Spanish-speaking lodges. So it's kind of an international community. And to my surprise, when I went to them and I said, hey, I want to start this Puerto Rican lodge, they were on board. So we got the approval of the lodges in my district, the district deputy, and we submitted the petition, and then we got a response back, I think in June. But I think the interesting thing is I didn't really know the difference between a dispensation and a charter until we started kind of going through this process. So a dispensation is just a temporary license, like a learner's permit, which Grand Law says, okay, guys, we see that you're brothers, and we're gonna give you the authority to act like a lodge, but it's temporary. So we're gonna give you to April, in this case, 2025, because we received the dispensation in 2024, to do a series of things. One of them being the 3 degrees of masonry and complete, opening and closing, plus a bunch of other administrative stuff that we got to comply with, opening a bank account,
trustees,
trustees,
building,
secretaries,
all
but
that.
treasurer, right, a rental agreement. So we put all that stuff together. So a dispensation, interestingly, is given at the discretion of the worshipful master. Of the Grand Master. So the Grand Master, at his discretion, can give you a dispensation. However, for a charter, the Grand Master kind of doesn't play a role. What happens is Grand Lodge will take your books at the end of the year. They'll get a report from the assistant grand lecturers that you did the 3 degrees and opening and closing from memory and that you're proficient. They'll check your books to make sure that everything's okay. The Charters Committee then at the annual communication will make a recommendation to the body of Masonry in New York and say, hey, we have these brothers, they submitted to us their books, they're proficient, and they're seeking a charter. And the whole body of Masonry, all of the masters across the state vote at the annual communication whether to grant this lodge a charter, which I think is an interesting kind of check and balance there between the Grand Master and the individual masters of lodges and how they interplay. But right now we're on the road of obtaining a charter.
That's awesome.
So,
And that would make this May coming up a very special Grand Lodge session when this all goes through, because I'm confident you're going to hit all the checkpoints, and the masters and the wardens of the lodges, the voting delegates, will be able to vote in this session. We'll be able to celebrate another new lodge in New York State.
that's what we are anticipating.
Fingers crossed. Yeah, fingers crossed. All right, so let's flip over to Brother Will, because there's an interesting element here, as you mentioned, and this fascinated me, because normally you hear of brothers in one lodge that all have an affinity for something, and they're like, hey, we want to start another lodge that's just based on this. Like, we want to have a music lodge or a foreign speaking lodge or a lodge that practices this style of ritual. In this instance, you had a collection of brothers from different lodges in New York, but also the most worshipful Prince Hall Lodge, the Grand Lodge in New York. Brother Will, can you kind of give some insight on how you got involved with this and how you're bringing in that Prince Hall element?
Well, first I want to say thanks, Right Worship, for allowing me to speak on your platform. With that being said, I always say that Freemasonry, and I've spoken to other brothers, and I've always said this, Freemasonry to me is like a tree, right? You have the roots. That's Freemasonry. And the tree grows. As the tree grows, it forms different branches. Right? So you'll have the Grand Lodge of New York, the Prince Hall Grand Lodge of New York. You have the Grand Lodge of Puerto Rico, the Grand Lodge of Haiti, the Grand Lodge of England. They're still part of Freemasonry, which is the root. So we're all connected by one. Although as they get up higher, the politics and the sovereignty separates us somewhat. But we're still connected by the landmarks, by what Freemasonry is. So I've always traveled from day one. I've always been traveling. Me and Rene go back through masonry, even to the neighborhood we grew up in, right? It connected us. Now, as you know, we don't have dual membership. Prince Hall Grand Lodge of New York doesn't have dual membership. You can only have one. You can only belong to one lodge. So
and I love that. The reason why is because you can only serve one master, from what I understand.
I don't know the reason why they do that, but I like it's good and it's bad. That's gonna take another turn. Why I say it's good? Because it's good because now you can only focus on your lodge, right? You focus on your lodge, you grow your lodge, versus being in another lodge, being in two lodges. Your cable toe is getting stretched to the max. You're trying to do too much; it could become burdensome. Now, when Worshipful Master Negrón, he calls me, he tells me the plan. I said, I'm with it. No questions asked. I'm with it. Now, the shit he didn't know, I can't join though. I can't join officially, but I'll help out as much as I can. Anything I got to do, I'm there with from the first.
Wow.
Whatever we have to do. Why?
That's awesome.
Because it's that paperwork that somewhat divide. I don't want to say divide because that's a negative connotation. What I say is it separates us where paperwork we can't, but regardless, we're still brothers. We still meet on the level. And this also represents part of my culture, and I definitely would love. And I know that the 10th Manhattan District, everybody has their flag up, right? And I would love to see that beautiful flag that Worshipful Master Negrón has on. And when Rene, he went and came up with a design and came up with it, I was like, oh, this is beautiful. I loved every aspect of it, and the history of it. I have family members that were in the revolution. It was a revolution against Spain back in the 1800s who were Masons. They were involved in it. My grandfather showed me that. I said, oh, wow, I didn't know this stuff, and I got the books on it now, so there was a connection to it. So when he invited me, I thanked him for allowing me to be down with it, to allowing me to get down, because, unofficially I can't do it. But what the Worshipful did was, he said, his first order of business was to make me an honorary member. So
nice.
I hold that honorary membership with high regards. I appreciate it. I love it. I'm one of the brothers in that lodge, and all the brothers treat me as such.
Let's bring in Brother Rene, because I know he brings a lot of the esoteric history, but also maybe you can give us a little background on the name for this lodge. My favorite to say, Agüeybana. I love this.
Sure. So when Worshipful Victor asked me what name would be for the lodge, my reply was, a lot of lodges, when they do create a lodge, is always named after an ex-Mason or a Mason that passed. For example, like my lodge, my mother lodge is George Washington Lodge, right? Who was a Mason. And in PR in the islands, they were most of the forefathers of Puerto Rico, like they had the forefathers here in the United States. We have a lot of them in Puerto Rico. So, and some of them were a distant relative of mine. In fact, Will mentioned a relative of his who we found out that we shared kind of the same relative who was a Mason from that time in the island. So I told Victor, I said, Vic, why not name it after an indigenous name who was to represent our indigenous culture? Because originally Puerto Rico was originally called Borinquen, from the indigenous people that once lived there. And in the indigenous roots, sometimes it's not really talked about on the islands in the Caribbean. It's not really mentioned. So I said, let's name it after a chief who was considered one of the most powerful chiefs in the island, and his name was Agüeybana. And the reason I chose that name was because the suffix way or Agüeybana means the sun. That's actually what it means in the Carib language. It comes from the indigenous people that once lived there. And Bana means expansion or greatness. And I said, this kind of relates to what Masonry is, because the sun, which represents the light, and the greatness or expansion of knowledge or light, or in search of light. And that's the reason why I came up with the name Agüeybana Lodge.
I love this. So a couple things to all three of you. This is what has surprised me as a proud New York Mason. When I learned that this was the first Puerto Rican lodge under dispensation, I was blown away, because I know in our metropolitan area that we do have foreign speaking lodges. So I want to talk a little bit about that, like the spirit as to why what brought you all together, because I'm sure it was a series of conversations. But the other cool thing is that if you can hear the sound of my voice on this podcast and you are a New York Freemason, you can support this lodge right now by considering to affiliate with it, even if you don't live in New York City. So I'm talking to all of my upstate and Western New York brothers. You can be a member of this lodge, and you don't have to attend all of the meetings. You can go to the ones that you're able to make to, but you can support what these guys are trying to do, because this is, as I keep saying, this is a very special thing when a group of brothers come together and say, we're going to plant our flag here. We're going to start a new lodge. So who started that conversation between the three of you?
Victor, you want me to go? Or
let me. So, okay. Right, Worshipful, let me look, to be Puerto Rican, and I think Worshipful Will and Renee can agree with this, is to be born in a culture of struggle for liberty, struggle of self-representation. You know, our whole identity came out of this desire to want to be free, right? So I think Masonry kind of played an integral part in it. And if you read a lot of what the founding fathers of Puerto Rico, a lot of them who were Masons, you could see the Masonic overtones in a lot of their literature and how they explain why they wanted freedom from Spain. So, and actually, the Puerto Rican flag, which I have on my shirt, was actually adopted in New York City by Puerto Rican exiles who were exiled by Spain, who were in New York, who met Cuban brothers here, who are also fighting for freedom against Spain. And that's why the Puerto Rican and Cuban flag are similar, but the colors are inverted. It was to stand in solidarity that Cuba and Puerto Rico were both fighting for its liberty. So it was in that context, right, that we said, well, we as Puerto Ricans here who have also endured our own struggles of integration, of discrimination, we wanted a place in Masonry where we could meet on the level, where we could express our ideas freely and do Masonry. I think that is at the essence what we were trying to accomplish. I mean, as you know, look, Masonry, little by little over the years, has opened up, but we felt that it was necessary to have our own kind of King Solomon's temple where we could come and do Masonry. So that kind of was like the drive. But you know, of course, as it kept going, Brother Rene, uh, and I just want to speak on something that Worshipful Will was saying. Look, the Puerto Rican community and African American community in New York City, we live side by side to each other. We endure a lot of the same forms of discrimination. We endured a lot of the civil rights struggles. Um, and I wanted to make it a point that the Prince Hall brothers were brothers, that we were on the level, that we were going to meet on the level, and that there was no distinction among us, that we were brothers. And, you know, whether we came from Prince Hall or Grand Lodge Estate, it didn't matter. Because we have to provide an example when we go back to the community that they can see, that the young people can see, wow, these guys are African American, they're Puerto Rican, they're Dominican, and they're all talking to each other. They're all getting along. They're all calling each other brother. I think that's important to fight a lot of the divisiveness that is happening in our neighborhoods. So, and I think Masonry is a great way to do that. But I'll turn it over to one of my brothers so they can, you know, give you their perspective of why we ended up starting this.
Sure. So, Michael, so you remember a while back when I did your first podcast about my travels to the island.
I remember that, yeah.
And I was writing for Craftsmen online about my travels. So at that time, I didn't know Victor at the time. So I was traveling there. And this time when I went to Puerto Rico, it was kind of like, because I usually go to visit family, but this time I wanted to go to visit family and also visit a Masonic journey to see to be around my culture and my roots, but with brothers. And as I went there, I connected with a lot of great brothers out there and Masons and I didn't know I was good friends with one of the guys who will be the Grand Master of Puerto Rico now. His name is Calito Barreto. Well, Right Worshipful Calito Barreto, who is the Deputy Grand Master right now. And as I came back and I met Victor, because me and Victor is in the same valley of New York City, and I met Timothy Rios, Right Worshipful Timothy Rios. I was trying to have them affiliate with the same lodge in Puerto Rico with me. And we signed the petitions and everything. It didn't go as planned. Now, Will was a different story because me and Will met in the Bronx in Pelham Bay. And it turns out that Masonry is beautiful. It's really is a small world. And when me and Will was talking and we were saying, hey, he asked me, hey, no, where are you from? I said, oh, I'm Puerto Rican. He goes, no, where are you from? I'm from Brooklyn. He says, me too. from the same part of Brooklyn. But turns out his dad and my whole family, they all were friends and they knew each other. And we didn't know that. We just found this out through Masonry, you know. And my mother knows his family. It's a small world, you know. And Masonry is so beautiful. And
his uncle was just in my house. His uncle would go to my house, know where my mother's house was at. I was like, oh wow, I didn't even know that.
Yeah,
you guys probably like celebrated Christmas or birthdays when you were younger and didn't even know it.
Yeah.
Well, he played ball because he lived up the block from me. He lived up the block away.
Yeah, right up the block from him. My grandparents had a house. But when Will, I introduced Will and Victor. Me and Tim were really me and Tim and Victor were friends and brothers through the Grand Lodge. And then Will came in. And then that's when Victor, and a while back, the Eastern Star chapter, Lower Lake chapter, asked me to do a lecture for the Grand Master of Puerto Rico when he was coming. I said, this was like 3 years ago. I said, it would be a pleasure. That's always been a dream of mine. And I invited Will, I invited Victor, and I invited Tim. And from there on, when Victor went to Puerto Rico, because he goes to Puerto Rico every now and then, he has a house there, and Will goes there every time, and Tim, they visit lodges out there. When they came back, they say, hey, look, Victor approached me, why don't we create this Puerto Rican lodge? I mean, look, they have the first Dominican lodge. They have a French lodge, Italian lodge. Why not create the first Puerto Rican lodge?
I think your story is going to be so cool because you're still all relatively young guys, right? And so this lodge now has a family element to it. And you're starting this, and the next generation of Masons that come in, your kids, their kids, they're all going to get to be a part of something special and have that family still be a part of it, which, talk about a mystic tie. Amazing.
Just real quick too, I just wanted to say one more thing before you go to the next question. The name Agüeybana holds a family tie, because that's where my father's not here, but my father's family are from a town in Puerto Rico called Guayanilla, and that was the town where Agüeybana ruled from those times. And the name kind of is very significant for me. Yeah.
Nice.
And me and I got one more. Wayne and Victor, my wife actually danced with his mother. My wife knew Victor when he was a kid. He was like, oh, Victor. When I told her Victor Negrón, she was like, oh, I remember him when he was a kid. But he didn't dance, and he wasn't involved in the drumming. But I'm talking about it had to be 25 years ago, 30 years ago?
Yeah, it was a long time, yeah.
About 25, 30.
So it's just full circle.
Oh man, there's like old Polaroid pictures of, I bet, the three of you guys.
Somehow we connect, but that's the esoteric, or that's the mysticism of Masonry. How did it bring us together? How somehow we got brought together. In New York, we got 9 million legal people here, and somehow Masonry brought us together.
Yeah. You know, I don't believe in coincidence. I believe in syncretism. That's what I believe. Yeah.
Let's talk about the Freemasonry aspect of this. So I'm Mexican American. I got a chance to visit San Juan, Puerto Rico last year with my wife. We made the American mistake. We've never had gone there before. And I'm like, oh, gas is so much cheaper here. It's not. It's not cheaper. But I didn't get a chance to visit a lodge, and I wish I had. So maybe you can take us inside, you know, for those listening who have never been there to see how Freemasonry is practiced on the island. What is it like there?
Vic, you want me to go? Or you go? Doesn't matter. Either one. Will visit. Yeah.
And right. So, and just, you know, kind of piggybacking on your question about Puerto Rico. Look, when we started talking about this, and I'll address your question shortly, but I went to Puerto Rico and, you know, sat down with the Grand Master, Aníbal Ruiz, and I pitched him this idea. I said, hey, you know, we're Puerto Rican, we're trying to start this lodge in New York. And I don't know if you know the history, but, you know, there's a lot of, and for whatever reason, and there's a lot of reasons, there's a lot of antagonism between the Puerto Ricans on the island of Puerto Rico as opposed to the Puerto Ricans in the diaspora here in the United States. And to my surprise, they welcomed us. It's so much so that last year when Worshipful Will and I were at their annual communication, the Grand Master came down from the Grand East and presented us with a symbolic charter, which to us was, wow. I was left speechless because it was such a outpouring of support and love from the brothers in Puerto Rico, and I really want to thank them because they have been such supporters and an integral part of this movement as well. It's just masonry. So, but if I could address your question as to masonry in Puerto Rico, Puerto Rico, since it's in the Caribbean, it has a lot of influence from a lot of different places. I think Right Worshipful Carlos Barreto, who Brother Rene mentioned earlier, said that the first lodges were French. Later on, there was other Grand Lodges that established lodges in Puerto Rico. The current Grand Lodge traces its heritage back to the Grand Lodge of Cuba in 1885. They started a provincial Grand Lodge, and then the Grand Lodge of Puerto Rico separated and started their own sovereign Grand Lodge. I think one of the interesting aspects about Masonry in Puerto Rico is that in the United States, the Scottish Rite and symbolic lodges and the Grand Lodges came to an accord that Grand Lodge had exclusive jurisdiction over the 3 degrees of Masonry, and Scottish Rite was going to do 4 to 32nd or 33rd if you were selected to be a 33rd, an illustrious brother. But so in my district is a little bit different because you have some lodges that have a hybrid ritual that's kind of Scottish Rite elements, but it's York. But in Puerto Rico, right. In Puerto Rico, they do Scottish Rite symbolic lodges. So their regalia is red and white. Their the signs of recognition are a little bit different. How they have the lodge room set up is different than how we do it in New York under the York Rite. I think that the Scottish Rite is a little bit more esoteric, kind of the way that they present it and how they do degrees. So it's interesting to know how each jurisdiction kind of has its own autonomy, has their own culture and traditions, although we are still, a brotherhood, and we follow the same landmarks. But how Masonry may change from jurisdiction to jurisdiction is kind of an awesome thing to see.
Let me ask this question, because this all came on my radar back in September when I saw the pictures on Instagram. I think it was on Rene's account. I was like, oh my gosh, we're getting a new lodge in New York. And I was like, oh my gosh, and there's Rene. I recognize him. And I noticed, as you mentioned, there's some old traditions from the island that'll probably be in play here. One was, from what I saw with the officers that were getting installed in for the lodge under dispensation, they didn't have jackets on. They just had the white dress shirts and different aprons than what you would see in the Blue Lodge typically. What kind of new traditions are you going to start here with your Puerto Rican Lodge in the Grand Lodge of New York?
So Victor's idea was to wear, I think it was Victor's idea, to wear the traditional Puerto Rican, and y'all call the guayaberas. They use them. I mean, they don't use them in the island. Of course, they wear a suit. But Victor got the idea because he went to Rhode Island. Am I correct, Victor? And he saw the first Spanish lodge on Rhode Island. They had the guayabera with a bow tie. And he was, we should stick to that tradition. And one of the traditions, if you ever seen the pictures in the installation, we're not using the typical worshipful master hat. We're using what they called the sombrero hats that they use, which a lot of the musicians in Puerto Rico, they're pleneros. They call them pleneros. They wear these hats, and to stick to that specific tradition. And the Tyler wears a machete instead of a sword.
Nice.
So,
and also, but you also, Rene, let them know that the guayabera is an official shirt. It's an official. It's what was it called, Negrón?
It's considered formal attire in the Caribbean, and in Cuba, in Puerto Rico. It's considered formal attire. So if you go out, and it's really because of the weather. Because I mean, you can imagine it's 100 degrees most of the year.
Yeah.
And to wear a heavy black overcoat or a suit jacket is probably not not the best thing to be doing.
No.
So,
No.
but
Yeah, not,
but the dress, and I read a book that Worshipful Will suggested that I read, Observing the Craft by Andrew Hammer, and he placed a big emphasis on the lodge having a uniform and how that creates a camaraderie, that creates a sense of a team. So, one, we wanted to do it that way so everybody looks uniform, and two, it was also part of this idea that we wanted to exhibit our Puerto Ricanness, if you will, within the confines of Masonry, right? So we
absolutely.
looked
Yeah.
we looked through the Constitution and said, hey, I think we could do this. So we decided to implement it.
To that part, living here in the nation's capital in DC, a lot of affinity lodges. We have a French-speaking lodge, a couple Spanish-speaking lodges, German-speaking lodges now, Italian lodge. We have military lodges. We have a musician lodge that has started. And one of the neat things when you get to travel and go to these affinity lodges, especially ones that are based on different cultures, it's like going to Disney's Epcot, but in Freemasonry, where you get to go in and get a little bit of a taste of that culture, not just from the brothers that are in the lodge or maybe the accents or the way that they do business, but also in the meals, the festive boards that happen afterwards, the events that they do, the camaraderie that they have. It's really a community of brothers in these special lodges. And that's one thing that I would also urge anybody listening to this podcast that will be in the New York City area. Look up, what nights do you guys meet?
Fourth Thursdays.
The fourth Thursday of the month. You got to come visit them in the Grand Lodge building and sit in and be a part of this.
Yeah, we'll be meeting in the City Island in the Bronx, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. And another thing too, Michael, that with the Guayabera, one of the things was the most important parts of it that I wanted was the Bible to be from the island. And we figure we have the Bible to be made in the island, custom made, and be brought from the island, so we can use that at the lodge. And the Deputy Grandmaster, right worshipful, I believe he's right worshipful, Galito Barreto, actually he surprised us. He came to New York for installations, and he custom made the Bible with the symbol, with the square and compass.
Oh, that's awesome!
And with the indigenous symbol on it, as you can see, what Victor Negrón is wearing. Right. That is the symbol of the Taino symbol from there. And the one of the brothers from there named Orlando, I have to say his name, Right Worship Orlando Melendez, he is a craftsman. He is a true Mason, a carpenter. He handmade all the gavels by hand, and he's the one that they use to make all the gavels in all the lodges in Puerto Rico. And he made for us, for our lodge. And that's the gavels we use today from the island, Yeah.
You've got a lot of special things that are going on with this new lodge. I'm really looking forward to this May at our Grand Lodge session. I can't wait to be there to celebrate because I know it's going to happen. And we'll have a new lodge chartered, and the first being a Puerto Rican lodge here for our Grand Lodge in New York. We had our first kind of checkpoint with the Grand Master that came and visited your lodge in September as the officers were getting installed under dispensation. What plans do you have to celebrate that moment when that charter is officially put into your hand and you can read it to your brothers in your lodge?
Wow, that's a great question.
Well, look, the Puerto Ricans, we're notorious for having parties, and I'm sure it's gonna be a boisterous festivity. And look, we hope that one thing about this process has been how everything has been kind of like organically happening. The support that we received from the Grand Lodge in New York and the Grand Master was phenomenal, and his support staff, the Grand Secretary, Right Worshipful Bateman, Right Worshipful Martin, and they kind of walked us through this procedure. The support that we got from the Grand Lodge of Puerto Rico, like I mentioned earlier, and just the brothers here. On the day that the officers were installed, we were anticipating maybe 50 or 60 people. And there was probably over 100 people there easily, 130. So much so that the lodge rooms in the Grand Lodge building are pretty big. people were standing in the hallway. It was amazing to see the support that we were getting, not only from the Masonic community, but from the Puerto Rican community at large. And we hope to continue making a mark in both Masonry. And again, this is a community endeavor. You know, a lot of us, Worshipful Will, Brother Rene, myself, I'm from the Bronx, they're from Brooklyn. You know, we came from humble beginnings, and we really feel that Masonry can be a great place for a lot of young men, particularly in the neighborhoods that we grew up in, that they can look up to men who have this kind of Masonic idea that they're trying to better themselves, that that we're upstanding men before God and Masons, right? So that they can be inspired too, and we can show them a different path than what they're traditionally being exposed to. So, you know, that's kind of the hope, that we can have an impact in our communities and in our families, that they can see the work that we're doing and kind of get inspired themselves to do something.
And
Brother
Michael,
Mike, you had asked about traditions, and Worshipful didn't mention it, but the tradition, right now we in the holiday season. And you said you're Mexican American, so I believe they do the Three Kings Day over there too, right? They celebrate the Three Kings in Mexico.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's one of the traditions that's big in Puerto Rico. They actually already started celebrating Christmas. In Latin America, it seems like they start from November and don't end till summertime. It's like it just keeps going. The lights are out. So the words came up, and it's been a tradition. He did it last year. He had the Three Kings Day celebration. This year it's gonna be better. We're gonna do we have a group coming out. We have a judge that's gonna be honored. We have a list of things that's going on, but this is gonna be on a traditional event that we'll do every year. So and it's a fundraiser. It's also to help the lodge. So if anybody out there wanna come out, right now prices are inexpensive, but you're gonna get a lot. You're gonna get a lot of food, partying, and
music,
just hanging out with your brothers and sisters, because it's Lorelei chapter actually donated to it, and is part of it. They're actually part of it. So that's one of the traditions that this Three Kings Day is. We're gonna uphold it. We're gonna do a lot to it. There's big plans to help children out in the community too, to start keeping donations from toys to give out in the South Bronx, to give out in Brooklyn, East New York, Bronzeville, these areas that are struggling. And we're gonna be in these communities, in the schools.
And another thing too, Michael, like you know, when me and Victor started picking, when me and Victor and right Worshipful Tim, you know, we purposely chose the officers of the lodge for a reason, because we were just like, we need like the amount of Rushmore of Masonry of brothers and these lodges who are great ritualists. And Right Worshipful Tim is like one of the Mount Rushmores in Masonry of ritualists, and he is by the book. This guy, listen, I'll tell you something a little interesting, funny. When Victor told me that he wanted to create this Puerto Rican lodge, a week later, he already had 4 sponsors. I didn't know it was going to be that fast. From the La Fraternidad, the first Spanish lodge. Tim Rios was already created the bylaws and everything. I was like, wow, these guys are. So, you know, we purposely pick, and some of the guys like the deacons and all these guys, we purposely picked them because they're great ritualists.
And when I look at that, I can look at like I told Vic before. Said Vic, Rene is gonna bring the spirit. He's gonna bring the esoteric part. Tim is gonna be, nope, you can't do that. He's by the book. He's like a secretary that's strict by the books. Nope, Grand Lodge is not gonna allow that. They're not having it. And Victor, he has the dream. He had the vision. He's like the artist. He's the one that sees it. He laid down that. That's why he's the worst. The trestle board and had it right there, right. So I was looking on the outside, watching how they move, I'm older than all of them, so I see a little different. And I'm like, oh, I'm reading the vibes on them. I'm saying, oh man, this is gonna work because they always, each one of them brings something unique, but it meshes right together, and it needs all three of those aspects.
Mm.
And this is what I was saying, that the organic nature of this. Look, the East, right, symbol of wisdom. The West, symbol of strength. The South, symbol of beauty and spiritualism. That kind of, again, nothing was forced. Everything kind of just fell into place the way that it was supposed to be. And yeah, the deacons, brother Ricardo Rosado and Jorge Zapata, the treasurer, the secretary. I mean, everybody came in, and we kind of just started working immediately. It was kind of like this beehive effect. And you know, I don't know, and Rene probably could speak better to this, but that to me is the beauty of Masonry. That all these men from different walks of life, different professions, all came together on the level to accomplish this mission.
Yeah. Yeah. And from my travels of meeting brothers from Philadelphia, Delaware, and brothers from DC, and everybody, you know, from fellow Puerto Ricans, when they started seeing me posting, they were already like, I want to affiliate. How can I be part of this? And these brothers traveled for the installation. And that was one of the reasons why it was like maybe 130 people that came. Yeah.
So I got to make my reservation now for when you guys get your charter for this party. Well, because right now it's just Agüeybana Lodge under dispensation. Soon you'll have a number to go with that name, which will be really special. And you're going to have your brother, and I think you're going to have a fantastic legacy. And just speaking on behalf of the Grand Lodge, I'm so proud of the work that you've done. I know the grit that goes on behind the scenes to get things going. And it sounds like you have a great core group of guys that are living the example of what we talk about, who can best work together, who can best agree. And that really should be the only contention between brothers. So job well done. And like I said, can't wait to celebrate with you all in May.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Yeah, thanks so much, worshipful brother Negrón, worshipful honorary brother. I think I'm going to create a new title just for Will. Mm-hmm. And of course, brother Rene Perez. We can't start off the new year without having you on the Craftsmen Online podcast. So thank you all for making time to join us today.
Thank you so much, Michael.
Are we finishing up? Because I got a couple more things.
Mm-hmm. Go for it. Yeah, we'll chop it in.
Yeah, so with the brothers in Puerto Rico, we got to give them a shout out, right? When we go there, the amount of love that we receive. There's a lodge, Luz de Toa, that's in Toa Alta, Puerto Rico. These brothers show so much. It's the way they receive us, the way they call us, right? What happened with this brother? There was a brother from New York, a retired bus driver. He went to he retired. He moved to New York to Puerto Rico. One day I'm in he says, Will, call me to smoke a cigar. I said, I don't smoke. He says, outside. If you don't like it, we'll leave. He buys me a cigar, and now I smoke cigars. The owner of the cigar lounge walks around, shakes everybody's hand. He shakes my hand. I see he has a ring on. I look at him. I say, hermano. He looks at me. You know that look. And hermano, as you know, means brother. And, he comes over, we start talking. I'm telling him my jurisdiction, we start talking back and forth. The guy that's with me, Danny, he says, what was that about? I said, well, he belongs to the same fraternity I belong to. He said, what fraternity are you in? Well, I'm a Freemason. He goes, oh, man, I always wanted to be a Freemason, but nobody ever asked me. I said, well, nobody will ever ask you. He said, well, then how do you join? I said, like that. So I called Randy over, which is the owner of the cigar lounge, and I explained to him what's going on. From that day forward, they took over. They called he called the Grand Secretary, who's the Grand Master now, Aniba Rosario, and they point him to the town that he's living in, point him to one of the best lodges on the island, and he went through there. What the brother told me was, now that he made a Master Mason, he said, I got family on the island, but I could call them, and they may call me back 2 or 3 days later. But when I call a Mason, they pick up, or they're there in my house. They always call. They always check on me. It's just a different vibe. over there. When we mentioned Carlos Barreto. He's the deputy grandmaster. I visited his lodge, so I give him my pin for my year's worst, and I gave him a coin. All he had was a pin on him. So he gives me the pin. He said, "There's a coin to go with this. I'm gonna bring it to you tomorrow." I said, "Nah, don't worry about it." He's the deputy grandmaster. He said, he's in Fajardo, and I was in San Juan, so it's about maybe close to an hour ride. That man drove an hour to bring me a coin. I said, "Yeah, you didn't have to do this. Like, you work. I don't want to impede on your time. Don't worry about it." He came all the way to give me that. It meant, and the count. It was one of the best coins I ever got. It looks beautiful, but I was like, that's how special they have something special on that island. It's something. It's like being home. It's the motherland. When we go there, the reception that we get, that they treat us, especially as Masons. I don't know if it's all Masons or it's us or just we from New York. There's something special there that they have towards us, these brothers. So when I say that, we go to the island, and the masonry that's done there, yes, is a Scottish Rite base. They have, believe it's 4 York Rite Lodge. What they call York Rite, which we know is the American Rite, but they call it the York Rite, what they call Blue Lodge, or they have their own culture there. They have 2 lodges that speak English, but even when you go to the Spanish-speaking lodges, and my Spanish is all messed up. Vic is a professional. He speaks it fluent, but my Spanish is not that good. But they still say, "Don't worry about speaking in English. Say it in English. Just come out. Don't worry about it. Feel comfortable. This is your home. This is your home." This is where that's that culture that we want to bring to New York. We want to share it with everyone. We want you to see that this is masonry. This is what it is, and this is throughout the Caribbean. This is throughout. Once you leave New York, I don't know about DC. DC is a little New Yorkish. But once you leave the U.S., the reception, the difference that I see, me personally I've seen, is it's almost like they inviting you to their personal house. Like, "Hey, come to my house." I'm like, "Wow, your house in Mexico?" I was in Mexico, and we landed in Mexico City, and then we had to take another plane to Chiapas. But I met brothers there, and the amount is like, I don't know, they just view you as like it's just a different vibe. It's like they view you as somebody important. I'm like, "Yeah, I work in the city. I'm a civil service worker. I'm the garbage guy," and they treat me like a dignitary when I was over there.
Yeah.
Different
So
vibe. I'm sorry.
two things on that. So one, now I know where my junior warden got it. He kept calling me Worsh all year, and at first I thought he was saying worst, but it was Worsh. But I get it, because he's not a Prince Hall Mason, but he works with a bunch of Prince Hall Masons, so that must be something that he's picked up. And I'm like, all right, now I know where Wes is getting that from.
Yes.
But two, the other thing, kind of speaking to what you're talking about, Worsh, is you're most likely going to Worsh. I said Worsh. Kind of to what you're talking about is you're going to have either a sister lodge or another lodge that in Puerto Rico that you'll kind of start to make Masonic bonds with. Are you looking at making trips there, or are you looking at welcoming delegations up from Puerto Rico to your lodge as part of the growth plan for the next couple of years?
Both.
Both. And let me just mention something about Worshipful Will. Actually, I think before I met Worshipful Will, he was also traveling to Puerto Rico. We found out later, but in our last time that we were in Puerto Rico in April, the Grand Master recognized the most worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of New York.
That's another story.
Which was thanks to Worshipful Will, who was kind of going over there, and it was a long story, but ultimately he got recognition, which to me was like
historical.
Wow, historical and mind blowing. And look, the reason why we opened.
I'll touch on that real quick. So what happened was, at Grand Session, I'm at Grand Session as Junior Warden, and I heard them. They said they voted to seek recognition with Puerto Rico. So I'm like, I'm like, what's going on? I make it to words. I skip Senior Warden. I go into words, but I'm going back and forth because my wife is from Puerto Rico, so she was born and raised on the island. So I'm always back and forth there 3 times a year. So one day I'm with Aniba, the Grandmaster. Young guy, they're very progressive. He's a 35-year-old Grandmaster, very progressive. Wow. He's into the esoteric. He has a whole team. Miguel, they all into this esoteric stuff. But anyway, we hanging out. It's an island, and people, everybody knows everybody somehow. They're related. They're hanging out. We're hanging out, having a cigar, and I called my secretary, who happened to be the Grand Secretary, Sandino Sanchez. I'm like, Sandino, I'm in Puerto Rico. I'm with the Grandmaster. Where's this paper so I could just give it to him? You could email it to him. I could give it to him. And he's like, hold on a second. I'm going to be with our Grandmaster in about 10 minutes. I'm going to call you right back. I put both of the Grandmasters. They called me back. I put the Grandmasters on the phone. They said, send the paper over. I have my secretary. Contact your secretary. It was done. Done deal. It was a paper thing where, I don't know, man, the Grand Secretaries it was on our side. We didn't send the paper over to them. So I just helped push it and be that annoying person that's pulling on their coat. Come on, let's do this. It's a simple piece of paper. Let's send it over. So it got sent over. The Grandmaster from Puerto Rico, he asked my Grandmaster if I could be a representative of Prince Hall on the island. So we just waiting on that process. I'll come out the East in 2 weeks. So let's see what happens from there.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
And worship, and this is what I'm saying, that all of these pieces were kind of independently happening, and then we kind of came together, and it kind of all worked out at the end. But to answer your question, look, to all the Puerto Rican Masons or Hispanic Masons, or you have an affinity to Puerto Rico, whether you be in Massachusetts, Boston, Chicago, Illinois, anywhere on the Eastern Seaboard, North Carolina, Orlando, this is your home. We want to make this the home to Puerto Ricans, including Puerto Ricans on the island. If you travel to New York a lot and you want to do masonry here, that you come here, and that we are the ones that are showing you hospitality, that we're doing masonry. So we plan to continue to go back and forth. I know all three of us are planning to go back in April, and for their annual communication in Puerto Rico. I think they're holding CMI this year in Puerto Rico in September. So we're probably going to go out there for that. And we're just going to continue being outside, as Worshipful Will likes to say, and continue building these bonds. Masonry is not something that you do on your couch. You have to. This is something that it's an intimate kind of bond. This is something that you actually have to touch the person. See them, speak to them. So we hope to continue, spreading our light, wherever we go, whether that's New Jersey. I know Worshipful Will and I are probably going to go out to New Jersey, Sons of Liberty next week, or wherever we go. But, this is the point of the lodge, that we continue to grow and we build this community.
And Michael, just one last thing, because I know you have to go. You don't necessarily have to be Puerto Rican to affiliate, because we have people who are non-Puerto Rican who are members, but they just want to affiliate with us and just be a part.
Do we have a Mexican?
We don't. But however,
here we go. I think we got Mike. I think Mike said he wants to affiliate.
I'm pretty sure this would be the first lodge I joined. When they read my petition, they would get the last name right. So that would be awesome.
There you go.
Yes.
As long as you can say Wepa.
Hey, Michael, I have some Mexican in me too. Don't worry about it.
No, I've had it my whole life. I'm good. Well, thank you again, brothers. This has been awesome. I was just cheating and looking at my calendar to try to find out where I have a fourth Thursday that would possibly line up with a holiday, so I could make it into a long weekend. But I do want to come. It would be an honor to sit and lodge with you guys. And I want. It's on my goal list for 2025. So.
Well, thank
you.
Do you
guys have anything going down there? Do you have anything going on in DC? I would love to go down there.
Well,
especially your lodge.
What I would invite you down here for, which would be phenomenal, and you're going to get some wonderful ideas and want to bring them all back to New York, is we call it our Universal Brotherhood celebration. That happens typically in June. And there's a couple components to it. So one is a lot of Freemasonry and DC celebrations. So we lay a wreath at Mount Vernon, the George Washington estate. We have a special gala dinner. But then the other cool stuff this year, we actually sat in the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Lodge of DC, and they exemplified the entered apprentice degree for us, which was, as a New York Mason, I'm like, this is exactly like word for word our ritual. The floor work is way more sharp than what we do in Blue Lodge in New York. But I knew that about Prince Hall going in, but I didn't realize like how close their version of the Preston Web is to the Grand Lodge of New York. But then the other cool thing that we do is for the actual Universal Brotherhood celebration, we have breakfast, usually with members of Congress who are Masons or their staffers. And then it's a whole weekend. It's like a Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
So once we get the dates, we take a road
trip. Well, and the cool event is we actually do the Universal Brotherhood Lodge, where the only person that speaks English is the Worshipful Master, and all of the other officer chairs are in German, German, French, Spanish, Arabic, like Greek, like all of these other, because DC is such a cosmopolitan area, which New York City could do the same thing. I mean, it would be tough where I lived in Albany to kind of pull that off. But just to give you guys an idea, like you could get together with your other foreign speaking lodges in the metropolitan area and do a,
I love
great
that.
idea.
And with
that's a great idea.
The Prince Hall component, like you could host it at the Prince Hall Grand Lodge and like, kind of force the Grand Lodge of New York guys to come in, and because that's kind of what happened.
You see his nose open up. You see the ideas. You see he's already thinking. He's like a machine. He's ready. He's already thinking. It came up.
Make it like part of your tradition. Do something like that.
When you talked about the ritual of Prince Hall, if not every 99% of the Prince Hall Grand Lodges use the Narazari, I believe his name was, who was a New York Mason. So we use his copy of the Preston Web. That's why it's like New York. He was a New York Grand Lodge of New York State Mason, and that's the edition that we use. That's the edition you guys use. Oh,
very.
New York.
Yeah, it's very, very, very.
Hey, Michael, just so you know, I'll be in DC in January because I will be doing a little bit of security for the inauguration there. So,
really?
Yeah. So, just in case you're around
through January. Oh, that's the 20th. So I will be getting back from the city on Sunday. I'm gonna avoid.
I'll be there Saturday.
Okay.
So yeah.
I'm gonna be at the Grand Lodge of New York Masonic Con the 17th and 18th, and then we're coming home on the 19th, and then I'm avoiding DC like the plague on Monday because dude, we had an event on Thursday night this week, and there was the White House Christmas tree lighting, and they're shutting down all these streets, and it's like, it's like when you guys have UN sessions in the city. It's just a nightmare. So yeah, that especially for that one, it's going to be just overloaded with tourists, and I'm just going to stay away. But if do you have a place? Are you staying in DC?
Yeah, I'll be there for Saturday and Monday.
Saturday and Monday.
Yeah, Monday,
okay.
Saturday and Monday. But I'm not sure. I don't know which hotel. I don't know. I haven't had a place yet. But yeah, one of the guys there, they were asking because I'll be working with brothers actually. Some of them are Masons.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
No doubt. Yeah. Capitol Police. Yeah.
Yeah.
No doubt on that. Cool. Well, you guys have a safe holiday season. Stay warm this year. I'll be thinking about you. Send me updates on anything that happens with the lodge, and I'll see you soon.
All right. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you so much.
See you, brothers.
All right.